going on, guys? Sean with Triangle of Truth here. I know it's certainly been a while since you've seen any of us here on the channel. We certainly hope that everyone is doing well, is safe and healthy with their families during these trying times. With that said, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about some of my favorite comics that I've read so far this year for 2020, because I decided to open up and branch out and read more than just superhero stuff, because it was starting to get a little stale. And in doing so, I've really discovered some really great stories along the way. And then when I come back to the superhero stories, it makes me appreciate them more. So with that said, I've got about 7 or 8 so far that I've really enjoyed. And hopefully in hearing about these, maybe it'll entice you guys to go check these out at your local comic shops or support the publishers by ordering them online. So first and foremost is one that I read kind of recently. It's called Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1 trade from Boom Studios. This is one that Jennifer, who is also here on the channel, she just picked up on a whim from work one day and read it, and then told me, "He's like, you really need to read this. This is such a cool story." And I was like, all right. So, it was a little slow for me that day, and I decided, yeah, why not? Pick it up, give it a shot. And let me tell you, I liked it so much that I now have it as part of my pull box to get the remainder of the series as it continues, because they're now on issue, what would be 7, once everything starts getting printed and coming back up. So I got issue 6. And it's a story about a girl named Erica, who is basically someone that hunts monsters. And she comes to a town where a monster has started killing children. And the thing with monsters is adults can't see monsters because they generally don't believe in them. Whereas kids generally do, and even if they don't, because they are kids, they have the ability to see them. So the adults are just trying to figure out what's happening, why are they disappearing, how are they ending up dead, and they actually think it's Erica because she happens to come into town at about the time that a lot of this stuff starts becoming well known. Volume 1 basically goes through her trying to figure out what it is. You learn that a little stuffed octopus that she's got is actually possessed by some kind of demon that only she can see. Excuse me. That only she can see. And you really only see that this thing is possessed one time, because she opens up the door to like a police officer in a hotel room, and you see behind her the big giant demon sticking out of this doll. But of course, the perception that they give you is the police officer saw nothing. And then that's how you learn that when it's saying something to her, it's not what she's hearing in her head, it's actually whatever's possessing this thing talking to her. So you see that has actually really yet to be explored thus far within the first 6 issues. And it goes on to the volume 1 basically ends with what you think is her having killed everything, and then you find out it's basically just one of the children. You haven't seen the mother one yet, just yet. So it's a story that I can't wait to see how it plays out. It's extremely well written. It's definitely for mature readers. But some of them really good artwork, great colors, great storytelling. It's just an all-around good book. So I definitely can't recommend that one enough. The next one was basically kind of my foray into your horrors and your thriller comics and whatnot, and that is Pestilence from Aftershock. And flat out, definitely a top 3 all-time story that I've read so far. And we have the actual omnibus, so I got to read all 8 issues, 8 or 10 issues of both story arcs that they did, that basically they all tie in together, but it was done separately in 2 different runs. Brief rundown of this one is this basically explores the Black Plague, but in a different way. It was not, what if it wasn't just a plague? What if it was something more evil, more sinister, and stuff like that? And that's what it kind of leads into, is this band of assassins that work for, the cardinal and the pope, trying to uncover the mystery as to why people are becoming infected and why the infected basically act like zombies and this and that. And it's a really dark, twisty story that in some ways you don't see the turns coming, and then other ways you do, but it's so well told. And the language for me, again, this is very much a mature book. There's a lot of cursing, just, speaking like a sailor. And, I got, not only was I wowed by some of the pages, because some of the pages get really detailed and graphic with the killing and just some of the blood, but and the scenes and whatnot of ancient Italy, Germany, and stuff like that. But just the language and some of that stuff made me laugh really, really hard. And that, if you can make me kind of go wow, laugh, and get drawn into, that's my favorite kind of stories. It's not just, oh, it has to be all ha ha, or it has to be, oh my god, kind of stuff like that. It's if I can get elements of several things that I enjoy while reading, comics, graphic novels, or even watching movies. Those are the things that tend to stick with me the most. So definitely check that one out. Like I said, you can get it as a full omnibus, either in trade paperback or the hardcover, and just prepare to be wowed by it. The next one is one that Jay had actually turned me on to, because he had talked about it for years, and that is Red 10 Volumes 1 and 2 from Comics Tribe. He had Volume 1, which has been out for several years, and he'd been waiting until, I think it was either early this year, that they finally had released the Volume 2, and to finish off the entire story. It's a 10-issue series, and it's basically, it's about the superhero team is like the 10 biggest heroes in the world, all coming together to try and figure out the mystery behind the death of one of its members. And I will say that in Volume 1, they do a really good job of moving around and deflecting as to who you think it's going to be. At first, for most of that thing, you think it's going to be Oxymoron, which was Red's biggest enemy. Red is the hero that was killed, and you think it was him through most of this first issue. And then they leave it on a cliffhanger where you actually end up thinking it's one of the team members. And all I will say is, when you get into Volume 2, everything that you thought, throw it out the window. And it's a thrilling, twisty, turny story. It's kind of like if you've ever watched the Sherlock Holmes, the Robert Downey Jr. ones, where you see all the twists throughout the movie, and then at the end he shows you how he was able to figure everything out, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of how Volume 2 is, and up to the point of they actually reveal everything that happened, why it happened, and what was going on. And it was so well written. And the one thing I will definitely say about Comics Tribe is the quality of their books and the artwork is second to none. I mean, honestly, I think even some of your bigger companies, DC and Marvel, Forefront, should take note, because it's quality work that they're giving you, and it's well more worth the money to me than some of the other stuff that I've bought. So definitely check that one out. Comics Tribe has them on their websites, both in trade paperback and hardcovers for both. And just get into them, because Comics Tribe has some of the best stories, bar none. So my next one is back to, kind of like I said, superhero. And I been reading a lot of zombie stuff and this and that, and decided, let me get back into my favorite character, whom anybody who's watched this channel a little bit knows. Daredevil is my favorite superhero, has been since the early 90s. And I was actually given the Kevin Smith, Joe Quesada run in trade paperback as a Christmas gift, and finally decided to read it. And that let me tell you, one of the best Daredevil stories, period. And I know that that's not just a me thing. Most people that have read Daredevil will definitely point to this book as being one of the best stories that there is, and it's no lie. It exceeded my expectations in every way. And it shows Daredevil in the way that, like, very similar to what you would see on like the Netflix series. It had that same dark tone, it had the characters. You see Matthew struggling with himself the way he does on, so it's everything that if you've never read a Daredevil comic but maybe you've seen the Netflix series, it's like that in this book, but maybe turned up to 10, and it's such a good story. Definitely recommend it because I guarantee that the twist is something that you didn't see coming. I know I didn't. So when it happened, I literally was like, "What?" And I literally was texting Jay, and because he's the one that got it for me, and telling him, I was like, "Wow, dude, I was not expecting what happened to this book to happen." So definitely check that one out. My next one is, again, something heavily recommended by the other two here. They told me to check out Marvel Zombies because I had been saying that I hadn't read a lot of really great Marvel stuff. Because to be quite frank, the last 2, maybe 3 years, a lot of the storylines that Marvel is currently running suck. It just, they don't grab me. So they were like, try reading some of the older stuff. So why not start with Marvel Zombies, whom we all know Robert Kirkman had a hand in this story, who is one of the best writers, especially when it comes to zombies in comics. And so I read book 1, and this is a book that literally from about the first page, you don't go from a stop and slowly build up. No, this is a book that goes from 0 to 100 in about the first 2 panels. And it is nonstop action, twists, turns, thrills for the entirety of the book. And so definitely one of the greatest stories, in my opinion, in comics. Definitely one of the best Marvel deals. And I've still got at least a good 3 more books to read, I think, maybe more. So definitely check out the entirety of the Marvel Zombie series, but I can only specifically speak to mainly the first main storyline. The next one is one that I actually have already done a review video on here on this channel, so definitely be sure to check it out. And it's called Drone from Red 5 Comics. I got this one because it was, in reading the synopsis of it, it sounded like a modern day version of, what is it? The movie went right out of my head. It was Matthew Broderick and War Games. That's what it was. It's like a modern day version of War Games. And so I won't give you too much detail on this because, like I said, you can check out the review here on the channel. I'll try to leave a description a link in the description below this video so that you can click on it and check it out. But it's a fun bit of a comedy of errors, though it does get real serious in certain points of it. And it's one that I can't wait to read the continuation of because they actually did continue to a little different storyline onto it that I believe they just finished the arc on. I'm mainly waiting for the trade to come out because I already know I'm going to like it. So I'm just going to buy the trade and read everything all in one hit. So definitely check that out, and really check out Red 5 in general because they've got a lot of good stuff. I know I've got 5 or 6 trades so far, and nothing has been bland. It's been really cool, different types of stories. They don't stick to one thing. The next one is another horror story from Zenescope called Satan's Hollow. And this one's basically about a girl whose family was murdered by a satanic cult when she was a child. But the cult was actually working for the devil and whatnot. And so she comes back to town with her now husband, and immediately upon coming back, it seems like everything that happened as a child starts up again. So she's going through this whole ordeal with struggling with trying to remember things because she really had blocked out quite a bit of it, and then starts remembering it slowly but surely, and you see the images and the visions in her head and whatnot. And comes down to the end of it that again, it's one of those twists where who you think has been manipulating her, who the bad guy is for the entire trade, is wrong. I mean, literally within about the last half of the last issue, you finally learn everything and you get it all figured out. So that's definitely one of those I highly recommend, especially if you're into that kind of, a graphic, horror kind of, killing, gore type deal. I'm just kind of sad it was actually a one shot. I wish it was something that can go on, but they do at least end it on a, in a good way. It's not one of those where you're like, it could have been better. But no, they tied it up with a bow. You just, it leaves you really wishing they could do some kind of continuation on it. So the very last one I have is something that I read on an app on my phone called Webtoons. Definitely recommend you checking that out. It's a good way to get access to a lot of different comics that aren't necessarily printed. They're all digital reads, and a lot of them are free. And there's quite a few stories that actually really will bring you in, and you're talking, some of them are well over 100 chapters and whatnot. They're not all as long as a 20-30 page single issue. So this was one that when I got Webtoon, I was told, check out Hooves of Death. As you can guess, again, this is another kind of like post-apocalyptic zombie type story. The difference is, this time around, you actually have mythical creatures interacting with humans. Specifically, you learn about, it revolves around Glitter, who is a unicorn, and part of a tribe of unicorns who live with humans in a protected zone village that they have a barrier around outside so that they can keep the zombies away from them. And it ends up that I want to say there's 52 chapters. I've read them all, but the season 1 is 50 chapters long. You eventually learn that somehow Death is behind most of this, because he's not allowing people, he's not actually doing his job. He doesn't want to let the dead die and then move on from the world, which is why you basically have the Walking Dead and all the zombies. And so because of this and a few other things, they go through, the whole story. You meet you see all sorts of mythical creatures, Bigfoot's in here, and they do that in a really cool way. Vampires, Pegasus, or Pegasi, if you want to talk multiples. And the list goes on. And then, of course, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, you get to meet some of them. And it's a really fun story. It's, really kind of, it's cool art, very kind of simple, but well drawn, really cool colors. Something that I think a lot of people could really enjoy. Maybe not necessarily for kids. I wouldn't really recommend any of these for kids. These are all like at least teenagers or older. But if you want something that combines what you know of zombies and stories like that, but does it maybe in a slightly more untraditional way, definitely download Webtoons from the Play Store, on your phone, whether it's Apple or your Google or Samsung phones, and look it up and give it a read. I promise you will like it. They just started doing their second season, which is issues 51 on, and it gives you a lot to read. So, but those are my top stories so far this year. Barely halfway done, and I've got that many that have enthralled me. So, I'm sure the list will change. I might do one later this year. I might wait till the end of the year and just tell you which one of these or how many of these stuck with me, and then ones that I've read throughout the rest of the year that have also really, really captured me. But that is actually all I've got for this week, guys. Again, hope everyone stays safe and healthy. Until next time, have a good one. Catch you later.